Today is March 25th, 2008. We are taping this interview in the studio of the Video Club of Laguna Woods Village, Laguna Woods, California. This is the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress of the United States, in partnership with the Historical Society of Laguna Woods Village. Our guest today is Harry Antonian. Harry was born on October 16, 1947, and he served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. And I am Carly Lutzow. Good morning, Harry. How nice of you to come to be interviewed today.
Thank you for asking.
Tell us your full name.
Harry Dennis Antonian.
And where were you born?
Detroit, Michigan.
And what was the date?
10/16/47.
Did you stay in Detroit for your young years, or?
Yes, I did until I got the draft notice letter from the president.
Okay. And what about your family? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, one sister, currently living.
Yeah. Well, what did your father do for a living?
He worked in the A&P grocery store, died at age 33.
Oh, my goodness. And then your mother had
She had to raise us.
to raise you.
Yes.
Okay. You went to high school in Detroit. Were there
Yes.
any special things you liked to do there? Where you would?
No, I really can't
Activities?
say. I worked going to high school to help my mother.
Did
help
you
my
work
mother.
outside of school?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Paper route and grocery
paper
store
route.
bagging.
Well, very good. All right. Tell us about when you got your draft notice.
Well, I just bought my first new car, 1966 Impala Super Sport. And a few months later, I received my draft letters from the president. And of course, I had to sell the car and went into the Army January 1967. Started my basic training. Then I went to leadership preparation school for 2 weeks, and I need to tell you the story how that happened.
Uh-huh.
And then infantry training.
Okay. When you were drafted, where was the first place you went? Did you go for training, or was this a center where they?
When I first entered the military, it was
Yeah.
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Okay. And was that kind of basic training
Yes, yes it was.
there? And were you assigned to a unit after you had your basic, or for more? Did you go for more training?
I went for leadership preparation school for 2 weeks.
How did you get into that?
Well, in the chow line, you know, my mother used to feed me 3 eggs and 4 pieces of bacon every day, and the chow line, they gave me 1 egg and a piece of toast and some corned beef hash. And I asked the man for another piece of bacon, he wouldn't give it to me, and so I threw my plate on the thing, and then of course the sergeant came over and said, drop down there and give me 100 push-ups. And to cut a long story short, that's how I ended up he made me an acting sergeant. He gave me 3 stripes to wear.
Well, how about that?
Then he sent me leadership preparation school
So
after that.
in leadership preparation, what did that entail?
It taught about how to motivate your soldiers, work with them, and the responsibilities, more intense training of leadership.
And about how long was it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right. Now you're trained as a leader. I think we should go back to one thing right now. Since you said you usually ate 3 eggs and
Yes.
the other stuff, look at you. Your uniform still fits you.
It's 41 years old.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
I'm very proud of it.
And you don't get to wear it real often, huh?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Well, we're glad you wore it today. When you left Fort Leonard Wood, where did you go?
I had then went to infantry training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you really get trained for war. My job was in the infantry, grunt, you call it, out in the field.
And how long was that?
I would say about 3 months.
3 months. And how old were you?
I was, 1967, I was 20, just barely 19 to 20 years old.
Okay.
And then I went to Vietnam and arrived in Pleiku, the city of Pleiku.
How did you get to Vietnam? I mean, from where?
Cargo plane.
Cargo plane.
Wasn't first class, that's for sure.
When you got there, tell me the name of the place that you landed.
Pleiku.
And after you were there, what happened?
Well, we got assigned to our company, and the helicopter takes you out to your company, and you're a new recruit there, and you start functioning and start living in your foxholes, and of course you walk point. That was the new
Explain
recruits.
that.
The new recruits always walk point,
Well,
point and flank.
what is that?
Well, when a company march is in a field, they're in a line, and then you usually have a point man who's in front, and then you have a couple of men flank about maybe a couple 100 meters outside the line of the company. So in case there's any enemy, they get hit first.
So the new guys get to
The
be
new
first.
guys walk point, and that's something you don't forget, because if there's a mine, you get the first one to get hit it. If you have enemy,
And the place was mined also.
there were mines. I didn't have any encounter with mine, nor did my company, to my knowledge. But we knew that the fear was there, the danger was there. There would be sometimes we'd come up on an empty enemy bunker complex. Thank God it was empty. And of course, the point man would get hit first if that was the case.
How did they provide for your meals?
We got sea rations. By once a week, they would drop us sea rations and clean socks. And sometimes our supply chopper was shot down. We had to call in and get permission to shoot a water buffalo and eat the meat. And by the way, it tastes like rubber. We cooked it with C4. It's an explosive white C4. You can light a match to it, and it ignites like a fire. That's how we heated a water buffalo.
Well, within your company, was there somebody that was like a cook, or did you guys just do it yourself?
No, we didn't have. There was no cooks. They were all. Anybody in my company was in the infantry.
Yeah.
We were not at back at a base camp, at a tent, or at cots. We slept in the field.
So the food was dropped to you.
Our food was in little cans, and we carried it in our backpack for a week. The most horrible one was the ham and lima beans. We used to give that to the prisoners that we caught.
Oh, did you
Horrible.
take prisoners on that kind of?
Occasionally, we've caught some prisoners. Yes.
How long did you stay in the field?
I was in the infantry till November 1 of '67. At that time, I had a grand mal convulsion, etiology, which means cause unknown, which my jaw and shoulder became dislocated and I was unconscious. At that time, I was shipped to a temporary medical station, a tent.
Yeah, what I was asking was how long of a period did you stay in the field when you were on this type of mission? Did you just stay out there a week or 2 weeks?
No, we lived in the field.
You lived in the field.
Yes. That was our house, the field.
What was your reaction to that as a young man from America?
Well, you do what you're told to do. And don't forget, I had a lot of good training prior to that. So good training. We knew what to expect.
Did you make any friends in the group that you were in?
Yes, we had a close camaraderie amongst us. I mean, these are the people that are going to watch your back and you're sleeping in a foxhole with. You get 1 hour on, 1 hour off. I mean, you need those people and they need you. Yes.
Did you continue with those friends at all later?
No. When I had the grand mal convulsion,
Yeah.
and I was in Japan and then back in another unit, the medical corps, I tried to look them up, and I guess my squad got hit, and many of them died.
Wait, you said you were back in the hospital in Japan?
Yes, in November 1 of 1967, I had a grand mal convulsion, etiology unknown, which means cause. My shoulder and jaw became dislocated. They sent me to a temporary tent medical facility about maybe 50 miles out when the helicopters came and got me and took me there, and they the doctor put his arm up against my shoulder and pulled it after giving me some morphine.
I hope so.
Put my jaw properly, and then they shipped me out to Camp Zama, Japan, and I was in a psychiatric ward for a month.
Did they give you any kind of rehab in there, rehabilitation, while you were in the ward?
No, they did not give me any rehabilitation. They diagnosed me as an epileptic at that time and gave me a seizure medication, Mycilin, 250 milligrams a day, and after 30 days sent me back to Vietnam as a medical records clerk, where I now was no longer in the infantry. I was now in the medical records in an area where like I was sent to the tent. I told you about the tent.
No.
Now I was at a medical group in the field where the wounded would be brought in, logging in those soldiers, and at times helping with medical, helping the doctors, such as with tracheotomies, doing suturing, giving shots, helping with minor cutting warts out. I remember that, with no medical training at all.
No medical training at all? Oh my. When you had that seizure, do you have a feeling about the cause of it? Had you ever had anything like that before?
Well, I read a book on it because, at the time you're now told that you're an epileptic, so I wanted to know about that. And seizures are caused from caffeine or anxiety or stress or lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't question it until 3 years later when I went to the VA in Long Beach, and the doctor told me, he says, well, you're not an epileptic, you have a nervous disorder, which of course I exited the military with that on my DD-214 form. And he ended up telling me to smoke pot, and of course I didn't go back to the VA after 20 years after that.
For heaven's sake. Well, you told us what you did in the medical corps.
The medical corps was more dramatic than the infantry, if you can believe that. Because in the medical corps where I was, the wounded bodies would come in, body parts. There were times when my job was to log in the body parts, and the bodies and the body parts. And there was times when I had to go to the chaplain, and I said, what can I do? I have a black leg and a white arm, and I don't have a torso. He says, don't worry, put them in a sandbag and just send them out. People in the medical corps, such as nurses, I can now imagine the things that they see more than the people in the infantry. And you would think the reverse, because they see everything. They see amputations, they see gunshot wounds in the stomach and the face and the groin. I remember Dr. Ayers holding up his Budweiser beer can as he's operating on people and telling me to keep them quiet, because people are screaming.
Oh, sure.
So I had these little toothpaste tubes of morphine. I would just shoot them in the neck to squeeze it to make them quiet. And many times they wouldn't they wouldn't get quiet, and many times they would say thank you. Because
Well, it takes away the pain, for one thing.
I mean, with a leg half blown off, you're in pain.
Was that your job for the remainder of the time you were in service?
It was my job in the remainder of my time in Vietnam.
Oh, time in Vietnam, okay. Have you some reactions to how this played out in Vietnam?
Well, as I told you, when I was in the infantry, I wrote to the then President Johnson.
Oh, did you?
Explaining to him, you have to understand, I was raised by my mother now. So I entered the military with like a virgin mind. I couldn't understand why people were throwing beer cans and bottles at us as we traveled by their village. I couldn't understand women and children being killed by mortar rounds and B-52 napalms when they didn't harm anybody. I just didn't understand a lot of things. And so I wrote to him. And of course, I did get a response from the White House.
Well, I think you would like to show us the response you got from the White House?
Yes. This is, by the way, for the original letter and envelope.
Can you kind of summarize it for us?
Well, I could summarize it. It's not that long. I'd like to read it, but
all right, go ahead. You can.
Keep in mind, I'm telling the President Johnson of the wrongs that are being done. His answer is to me, February 15th, 1968. Dear Specialist Antonian, President Johnson has asked me to thank you for your interest in letting him have your comments on matters which are of concern to us all. The doubts you voice at this time are understood, but since the quality of our nation cannot be gauged by the actions of a sensational few, we cannot share your feelings of despair. The vast majority of your fellow citizens still upholds the principles upon which our country was founded and is willing to work for the preservation for their defense. The President wants you to know that his prayers and constant efforts efforts are directed toward a better way of life, when loved ones are reunited and free men may walk in safety with dignity in a world of peace. You have the President's gratitude for your contribution to this goal and his warm good wishes. Sincerely, Whitney Shoemaker.
How did you feel about the letter?
As if somebody stamped the word rejection on my forehead. You asked.
Yeah, well, I think that's important to know your reaction.
It is this letter that haunts me today. I have written about it, and I've had some of it published in little magazines.
Yes, and you're a writer.
Well, part-time, yes.
Well, yes, but you do.
It's a way of expressing myself. Some people go out and shoot people and be violent. I like to use a pen and paper. I think that's more powerful.
I think it's very powerful. Did you get the letter back when you were still in Vietnam?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
In fact, the company commander was over my shoulder, gave me the letter from the White House and said, "What's this?" And I told him. He stood over my shoulder as I read it. And of course, the other members in my group were pretty happy that I wrote to that. They thought that was pretty bold. I said, why not? I mean, he was our commander-in-chief. And keep in mind one thing now. I grew up without a father. So the military was my dad. He was my ultimate father. So here I'm writing to Dad, and Dad's writing me back. The whole White House thing. So I took to that like a fish like water.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other soldiers who had a father in their life, you see. That was my new father, the military. So that's why it's impacted me more. But I understand that I did the right thing, and I reflected the tone of the nation at the time without even being in the nation. I didn't know that, but until later on in life, you see.
Was your company commander interested in your letter?
I told him about it, I showed it to him, and no words were said after that. I think they all felt what I felt, only they just didn't have the nerve to write. I had nothing to lose, you know.
As you continued working in the medical area, were there any particular things that stand out in your mind?
Well, they did
Good
give
or
me,
bad?
they did give me an Army Commendation Medal. That's the green one here. That's for over and beyond the service. It was quite a surprise, and I appreciate it. I did a lot in that vocation. I know I did, because I did a lot of things that I wasn't trained to do. And like I told you, suturing.
Did a nurse or a doctor help you with what to do?
No, you watch. I mean, when you got bodies coming in, you got one doctor and 3 medics, and you got other ones with shrapnel in their stomach. You just get a pair of tweezers and some alcohol, and you start picking it out.
Well, you pick it up pretty fast.
Yeah, and if you see wounds that you can clean out, just need a couple of stitches. I mean, I've seen the doctors how to thread a suture, a little curved suture. You just stitch it up and tie it off, and boom, it's done. No big deal.
Did you work with one patient, one doctor, or?
No. You have to understand.
I mean, by one like that?
When the wounded come in truckloads, and you have 1 or 2 doctors and 3 medics and 1 medical records clerk, you don't sit there and watch them bleed. You do something. Regardless of logging them in, you could log them in later on. Who cares about that? You help those soldiers out. Those are your brothers.
Well, I'm glad that you did. And how long were you doing that?
I was doing that about, I'd say about 5 months. Because I was a month in a hospital, 5 or 6 months in the infantry. My whole tour was a year in Vietnam.
Well, that seems like you had exposure to quite a few things there in Vietnam that were pretty important. Do you think that the seizure that you had was actually brought on by that? Have you ever had another one?
No, never.
So, what about people that you got to know in the when you were in the medical corps? Did you make friends there?
I made friends there, but I haven't nourished that friendship because it's not something I want to keep reliving. I want to let that part of my life just go away. I mean, I live with nightmares as it is, sleepless nights. I don't know what it's like to sleep without a TV on. You know, every woman I've been with in my life, don't understand why I have to have the TV on. It's because the mortar rounds provide security for me at night when I was in the infantry, the noise, and when it's quiet, that's when you have to be hypervigilant and alert. And so I don't know what it's like to, what it's like not to sleep with the TV off.
When you completed that, did they release you, or there was a reason why it was the end of your tour?
No, I finished my tour and discharged honorable.
And how long was your tour from the beginning that you knew you would be in for?
2 years. When you're drafted, you're only in the military for 2 years. People who join the military are in for 3 or 4.
So you finished your 2 years, and you finished in the medical corps there?
Yes, and my last duty station was in Colorado for 6 months at Fitzsimmons Hospital in the tuberculosis center as a medical records clerk.
What were you doing there?
Logging in tuberculosis patients as they came in the hospital, Fitzsimmons Hospital.
Where were you discharged?
I was discharged. Where was I discharged?
Yeah? And when?
In January of 1969 in Denver, Colorado. Then I went home to Michigan.
When you got home, did you use the GI Bill at all? Or what did you do?
When I got home, I didn't do a lot.
Did you
was
find
still
the adjustment difficult?
Very difficult. You have to understand something. When I'm walking down that airport with this uniform on, this actual uniform on, and you're having people not look at you or go like that, and I just got back from a war zone for those people. You're not kicking your heels very much. You're kind of putting this all together. Where do you fit in? You want to go back to war. And fact is, when they had the Iraqi war with Kuwait, I wrote the Army. I wanted to go back. They said, you're too old.
You're too old.
Yeah. But no, to answer your question, it was quite an adjustment. And war is so hard for young boys to process. You know, like Alfred Adler says his quote, war is murder and torture against our brothers. And it's hard to go to war when it's not even your own people. And that's to answer your question, yes, the adjustment's hard.
Did it take several years, or are you still having a problem with it at the time?
Well, I have my difficulties. I'm not so sure the word adjustment ever happens. I'm not so sure in my philosophy. The Harry Antonian's dead. This is somebody else now. This is a new person who's had new input and new experiences, and I'm not that same person my mother raised.
Of course.
I mean, I've seen too much stuff.
So what did you decide to go in to do when you got back? Did you take a vacation, or did you decide to go to school or get a job?
I went back to the grocery store business that I had before I went to the military, and did that, successful at that, got married, divorced 2 years later, came out to begging for meals on Hollywood Boulevard in La Brea, Sunset Boulevard in La Brea, with my hand out for about a month and answered an ad, and started making some money, and bought property, and married again, and 2 more children, and got divorced. You know, it's there's something about veterans, they just can't.
It stayed with you, and it affected your marriage.
Well, there's
or do you think
there's a lot of baggage. Put it like that. Let's just leave it at that. Baggage. There's a lot of baggage that comes with it.
So you worked at. Your job was working with the grocery business?
In Michigan, yes.
In Michigan?
When I came out here, then I went into telephone sales and did antiques.
Did you ever tell us what town in Michigan you lived in?
Lincoln Park,
Lincoln Park, outside of Detroit.
where I went to high school.
So you were in the grocery business, and did I hear you say you moved on to something else, or did you expand that?
After I left Michigan, to my first divorce, I came to California and ended up on Hollywood Boulevard, and then answered an ad for telephone sales, and then did that for a while, then did antiques. And got married again, and got divorced again, and now I'm with somebody else again.
You mentioned children. How many children?
Three children.
Do
Three
you
children.
have contact with them?
Yes.
Do they live around here, or do you?
One lives in Kansas, two live in Los Angeles.
Fine.
Kansas City, Missouri, I'm sorry.
You've got something in your hand. Can you
Oh.
show us that?
This is my short timer stick. When I was in Vietnam, many soldiers had a little stick that they had for the last few months before they go home. It's something like, you just kind of, like a security blanket, as you're going home. There is hope. There's hope. They're going home.
And you've kept that.
Yes, this and my uniform, yes.
I noticed we can't show it, but you had quite an album of pictures that
Yes.
from your time there.
What I did is took pictures, Instamatic camera, and then sent them to my sister, and she would develop them. And then when I got home, all these pictures were waiting for me. I
Yeah,
didn't
and
know
your
that.
book is like,
Yes.
does that make you feel, does that bring it all back when you look at it, or does it make you just feel like it's
I don't need pictures to bring it back. It's here, right here.
it's there all the time?
Every moment. I don't need any notes, nothing. I mean, it's right on the tip of my tongue.
When did you come to Leisure World, the Laguna Woods Village?
September of last year.
Oh, you.
So I have four. This is my fourth house, so it's a little place we come for a couple of days a week, and we really enjoy it out here. All these little places to go to dancing and this and that, and I can play tennis a lot, and we really enjoy it here.
So you kept physically active.
Very active, yes. Every day I go to the health club and play tennis 3 times a week. I have to. It's a way to release stress and make endorphins, and it's like taking drugs. I don't do physical drugs, so my drug is exercising.
Well, it's safer.
Yes, yes.
What are you doing here in the village? What have you joined, or what kind of activities are you interested in?
I joined a writing club class. I played tennis. Yesterday I played, and we do a lot of dancing.
How nice.
Oh, we're doing that a lot, so we're having a lot of fun with that. Dancing lessons, too.
What have you done for the Writers Club?
I wrote a couple small little drabbles that won second place, and then they made me the quote master on the Right On show for 2 minutes. I give a quote and talk about the author.
Does any of this relate to your service activity, or is it like a whole new world?
No, it's not related. If it was related, I probably wouldn't do it.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your service life or reactions? You've given us a really good picture of how you reacted to all this.
What I'd like to emphasize to you and to anybody who watches this tape is you may want to ask yourself, how many veterans have you thanked for their service? More importantly, though, how many will you thank in the future? Those poor boys, wherever they are, Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever they are, they're not going to come back the same people. And you do good by acknowledging them, just for a moment. It means a wealth to them. I'm sure of it. I know. The only ones who have ever thanked me have been my children on Veterans